Whispers in the Woods. It was supposed to be an epic weekend. A group of friends, Kelly, Sarah, and Jason, piled into a car, laughing and jamming to their favorite songs. They were headed to the Whispering Pines Forest, known not only for its beauty, but also for the weird stories associated with it. The forest looked innocent enough when they arrived. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, birds sang in this beautiful afternoon, and all in all, it was just a fantastic day in the afternoon autumn forest. That night, they sat around the campfire. Shadows stretched across the trees, creating shapes that seemed to shift and sway. "You guys ever hear about the whispers?" Sarah asked, her voice low and teasing. "They say if you listen close, you can hear them calling." "Stop it, Sarah. You're not scaring anyone," Jason laughed. "It's just a dumb story." The others shrugged it off, but an uneasy feeling settled over them. Later, they crawled into their tents. They could only hear the sounds of the forest wrapping around them. Crickets chirped and an owl hooted far away. But then, just as they were drifting off, they heard it. Soft, almost like a breeze. But it wasn't the wind. "Did you hear that?" Kelly whispered. Her eyes were wide open, and she was trembling in fear. "Hear what?" Jason mumbled, half asleep. "It's just the trees." But Sarah was already sitting up. She heard it too. "No, really. It sounds like whispering," she said. "Girls, just go to sleep. There is nothing out there," Jason mumbled. He was exhausted and quite annoyed. But Sarah and Kelly couldn't sleep. In fact, they were frightened. They were listening to the strange sounds of the forest. At first, it seemed that there was nothing unusual. The sounds resembled wind howling among the trees. But then it became clearer. "Come, follow, deeper." "What the heck?" Jason muttered. "That's creepy." They exchanged nervous glances. Nobody knew what to do. "Let's check it out," Kelly suggested. Her voice was shaking. "Maybe it's just some other campers." But a part of her didn't believe that. Something felt wrong. "Yeah, we're probably being pranked," Jason said with a newfound confidence. They stepped out of the tents, flashlights flickering in the dark. The forest looked different now. They couldn't recognize a single tree. It was as if the forest wanted them to get lost and swallow them. One by one, the whispering seemed to grow louder. It was wrapping around them like a thick blanket in the hottest summer days. That would explain the sweat running down their cheeks. "Come, follow deeper." "Guys, this isn't funny," Jason shouted. "Nice prank, but we are going back." But they realized they were lost. All the trees looked different than a minute ago, and the path suddenly disappeared. "It's so dark here," Kelly whispered. "I can't see anything." "We need to go back," Jason whispered. "Follow me. I think I remember the way," he said. But after a few steps, he froze. The ground beneath them felt alive. He felt something trying to tie his feet. "Do you feel that?" Jason gasped. They pointed their flashlights down, and their hearts stopped. They saw roots and snakes tying their feet to the ground. "Run!" Jason shouted. The girls didn't need to hear that again. After a few seconds, they freed their feet and ran away. They were screaming in fear. But Jason struggled as he went deeper into this treacherous soil. The roots were now holding his feet tight, and the snake started to move up his body. "Help me!" Jason shouted. But he didn't get any response. Desperate to free himself, he started hitting the roots with his flashlight. But it was no use. In fact, after a few hits, his flashlight broke. He was now left in the dark. He was panicking. The snakes now tied his hands together so Jason could barely move. It seemed it was over for him, but suddenly he heard a deep voice. "Leave him, we need him," it said. The tight grip loosened. Jason seized the opportunity and ran as fast as he could. After a few minutes, he stopped. He started to wonder who the voice in the dark belonged to. But did it really happen? Or did his imagination try to trick him? But there was no time for such questions. Jason needed to find the girls. In their panic, they lost track of each other. "Kelly? Sarah?" Jason called, but there was no answer. Just the echo of his own voice bounced around. Jason was alone now. He tried to call out again. "Kelly? Sarah?" His voice seemed to vanish into the darkness. There was no answer, only silence. But then he heard it. A twig snapped behind his back. Unable to see anything in the dark, he started running. He heard its steps behind his back. He could feel its breath on his neck. Something grabbed him, but it lost control. And then, complete silence. Only the whispering, "Stay with us." But Jason had no intention of staying. He needed to find the girls and get out of there. He just needed to keep going. Suddenly, the deep voice whispered right into his ear, "Did you think you could run away from me?" Jason's heart stopped. He started throwing punches, but he didn't hit anything as he couldn't see without his flashlight. After a few minutes, he heard a creepy laugh fading into the darkness. Jason froze. The laugh definitely didn't sound human. He stumbled backward, almost tripping over a root. "This isn't happening," he muttered. "This can't be real." He started to run again. He wanted to call the girls, but he couldn't just call their names. He knew that thing would find him if he made a loud noise. He needed to be as quiet as possible. But was it even possible? Hours seemed to pass as he was running through the forest. He felt like he was going in circles. Every now and then he heard that same rustling behind him, like something was following him, just out of sight. At one point, he thought he saw a shadow between the trees, a tall, thin figure watching him from afar. He blinked, and it was gone. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the sky began to lighten. Pale gray light filtered through the trees, casting long shadows on the forest floor. Jason's legs were weak, and his whole body ached from running through the dark. As the morning sun crept over the horizon, he finally saw something through the trees, a clearing. He stumbled toward it. He felt relieved. This was a pleasant change after the whole night in the forest. But when he reached it, he froze. In the center of the clearing was an old stone altar covered in strange symbols and surrounded by a circle of stones. It looked ancient, like something out of a nightmare. The stones were blackened as if they'd been burned, and dark stains covered the ground around them. Jason felt a chill creep up his spine. He didn't know what he was looking at, but it felt wrong, like he was seeing something he wasn't supposed to. The whispers had stopped, but the silence felt even worse. He took a shaky step closer, drawn in by some dark curiosity. He knelt down, reaching out to touch one of the stones. As his fingers brushed over it, the air grew colder. He swore he heard a faint, echoing scream. Jason looked around. He realized then that he wasn't alone. A dark figure stood on the opposite side of the altar. It had no face. It was just a silhouette staring at him. Jason quickly backed away, stumbling over his own feet. The figure didn't move, but he could feel its gaze burning into him. He took a shaky breath, turning to run, but the trees blocked his path. "Come back!" the deep voice commanded. Jason was trapped. With no other choice, he had to turn around. The shadow didn't move. It just watched him with those hollow, empty eyes. He forced himself to speak. Where are my friends?" he managed to ask. The figure didn't respond. It just pointed its long, thin fingers toward the altar. Jason's stomach twisted. He didn't want to look, but something made him. His breath caught in his throat as he saw it. There, on the stone altar, was fresh red liquid. Dark, sticky, and still wet, it dripped down the sides, pooling around the base. His mind raced, piecing it together. No, he whispered, taking a shaky step back. This couldn't be happening. A ritual, recently. He felt sick. He looked at the figures again, desperate for answers. "Where are they?" he choked out. "Where's Kelly? Where's Sarah?" But the shadow just kept pointing without saying a word. Jason turned his gaze back to the altar. He forced himself to look down. That's when he noticed something he hadn't seen before. Fresh dirt. He stared, the realization dawning on him. There were mounds of earth surrounding the stone, small, neat piles of freshly dug soil. "No, please no," he whispered, but he couldn't stop himself. He knelt by one of the mounds, his hand trembling as he brushed the dirt away. Just beneath the surface, he saw it, a piece of torn fabric, familiar, with a pattern he knew too well. It was Kelly's shirt. Jason stumbled back, a scream caught in his throat. His mind was spinning. He didn't want to believe it, but the truth was staring him in the face. His friends, they were gone, buried here like some kind of offering. The figure moved closer, and behind it, Jason noticed 11 more. They surrounded him. He felt trapped, caught in a nightmare with no way out. "Why?" he asked. "What do you want from me?" But there was no answer. Only silence, heavy and oppressive, as the shadows closed in. And then he heard it. That same whisper, chilling and final. "Stay with us." Jason's scream echoed through the trees, swallowed by the darkness. The forest grew silent again, leaving only the stones, the graves, and 13 shadows whispering for eternity.